This is Let's Talk Tribe, the official Let's Go Tribe podcast, episode 104. I'm your host, Matt Lyons, and in this week's episode, Yan Gomes is now with the Nationals, Carlos Santana is with the Mariners, and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff over there out west. Trevor Bauer had himself a weekend. Baseball Prospectus has a new stat, DRC+. We'll talk about that and what it thinks of the Indians, and of course we'll answer your questions. Joining me for all that and more is none other than Mr. Merritt Rolfing. Merritt, how you doing?
I forgot about the Carlos Santana trade, too, until literally just now.
That is the thing that happened. I don't care how long it's been. We're going to remember Carlos Santana and follow him.
I find that personally insulting. You signed it. God damn it.
Hey, let's start with that, just because I'm insulted by that, too. That's my main thing, is that like you signed with this team thinking you were going to be on this upswing. This is your one big chance to sign with a winner, and then you're dealt to the Mariners, who are doing whatever they're doing now.
Marinering, as is the norm.
But how does that make free agents feel about the Phillies, that they'll sign you to this deal? And I'm sure they promised Carlos Santana, like, oh, we're going to rebuild around you. We're going to be winning in a couple years. You got to come here, and then they do that.
I mean, that's a very good question, and I mean, it does kind of bring into stark relief the how at the very basic, like a lot of these teams more and more viewing the players as a commodity. I mean, it's always been that way, obviously, because they have the labor and the team wants their labor to win championships and sell tickets. Also, I don't know, sports are weird that way, where they're both the product and they're the labor, so it's strange that way. But yeah, no, exactly. Like more and more, you see teams that are highly analytical and doing things the quote unquote smart way. Obviously, like in this case, trading Carlos Santana because Rhys Hoskins is a train wreck in the outfield, but they got to keep his bat in the lineup, and for all his merits and being Carlos Santana is not as good of a hitter as Rhys Hoskins, and he can't play DH because, well, we won't get into that because
I mean, he did play outfield in the playoffs or the World Series.
I'm just saying. World Series, though, that's the biggest stage. Excellent point, Matthew. Yes, so that's a thing. No, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's something that it'll make free agents kind of look askance at the Phillies or anything, because other teams do the same exact thing. So whatever, I guess. So
yeah. Now, the good news is the Mariners are probably more likely to want a prospect or something for Santana. So, I mean, maybe the Indians, I don't know, sneak in there and grab him just for the all of it and send him Yonder Alonso.
Oh, I think that's a great idea, actually. I mean, it's a nice homecoming for Yonder Alonso after his epic time up there in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, that's right. He was on the Mariners. I forgot about that.
He was dreadful on the Mariners.
Yeah,
very good.
There you go. There you go. So another trade that happened that's a little closer to the current Indians. Of course, we all love Santana, but he's been gone a year. Yan Gomes is traded to the Washington Nationals, or in his first tweet, he called them the Washington Nations, which is good. The Indians sent him to Washington over the weekend for outfielder Daniel Johnson and relief pitcher Jeffrey Rodriguez. Johnson just reached Double-A. He's like the same kind of outfielder the Indians have been amassing, like these borderline prospects that are looking for a shot that might be good in a year or two. Toolsy, there you go. That's the word. And then Rodriguez failed as a starter with the Nationals. He was really bad. But as a reliever, he had a 2.7 ERA in 13 innings. He's got a good mid-90s fastball. He walks a ton. So this is what we got now. Yan Gomes is gone. Roberto Perez. I'd assume Eric Haas is going to split time with him unless they sign somebody.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about this now? Yan Gomes is no longer here. Of all the people that were going to be traded, I didn't think Yan Gomes would be one of them. It kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah. The rumor started, and then he was traded like a couple hours later. It was crazy.
I think one thing that it at least suggests to me is, first of all, none of us writers, fans, whatever, really, and even probably within front offices and whatnot, have a really firm grasp on the actual impact of a good catcher, right?
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of just everything from blocking to calling a game to et cetera, blah, 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 blah. I mean, they're involved in literally every single play throughout the game, and they can have a much larger impact. This is one of the reasons I think that Roberto Perez, despite his dreadful lack of ability at the plate, received a nice little extension. It's not like he was expensive or anything like that, and it's nice to have a good, solid backup catcher. But he does, I think, anyway. I have no way to quantify or demonstrate this, but I do think he's better than his offensive numbers kind of suggest, or even things like defensive wins above replacement or defensive runs saved or any of that really suggests. I do think he's a better catcher than than a lot of. I think he's one of the best, probably defensive catchers, or at least has demonstrated in the past that ability. So but I also thought that about Yan Gomes too, is the thing.
Right, and he at least got hit a
So
little bit. I mean, Roberto is
right, exactly.
abysmal at the plate.
I mean, just so bad. I think it was 2 years. Remember what was it? It was 2017 where he didn't have a base hit for like 3 months or something like that. And I was there for it, Matt. It was brilliant. Thrown out trying to stretch a single into a double. It was great. But I don't know. It seems like about the kind of return one would expect for Yan Gomes. We all like him. You watch him a lot. And he seems like a cool enough guy, but he's like a great player. I think he was an all-star this past year almost by default. And like, you read the papers around here in DC and it's like, hey, we got an all-star catcher. And like, that's a great way to write a headline, I guess. Right. So,
I mean, he was a decent hitting for a catcher. Like he did 80-something WRC plus, but that was in the upper percent of catchers last season.
He was approaching 100. I thought he was right around 100 in WRC plus. I thought anyway. He was about a league average hitter. Or
oh no, he was over. You're right. Yeah, he was over.
Yeah.
So still, so that's a pretty good for a catcher. Right. Like as good as he has a defense and hitting average, that's like all you want.
I mean, and I'm not going to sit here and say this is going to, this spells the end for Corey Kluber as an Indian, or this is going to ruin Corey Kluber, anyone who's gotten used to throwing to Yan Gomes. I have a higher opinion of whichever Indians pitcher liked him as a backstop more than to think that was the only thing making them a good pitcher. But again, like you said, he hits okay. He hits decently for a catcher, and I don't know. I thought he was very, very good behind the plate always. I don't know. I mean, everything I just said about Roberto Perez, seeing the return that came back for Yan Gomes kind of discounts that, because what came back was not anything really top flight to any degree. It was, as you said, kind of a fringy prospect, toolsy as they come, and then a reliever. Having said that, I don't know. We've seen the Indians turn this kind of a trade into solid gold time and again. So I guess we'll see. It sucks.
Well, I mean, even like speaking of Kluber, it's like would they trade like the Brian Ludwig that eventually
got
him or something? Or was
that was the Ludwig deal. Yeah. Yes, I think it was the Westbrook deal. It was a Vinny Pastano deal that turned into Mike Clevenger. The Westbrook deal.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, they have a history of it, but I don't know how many more times they can do it. I don't know what they're really finding.
I don't know. I have a high opinion of their ability to develop players. Maybe not so much relievers, but starting pitchers and hitters to at least some degree that seem to be able to get the most out of guys. So I don't know, maybe it's going to be good, maybe not. I don't know, but I read a tweet today that was just saying something about the MLB as a whole has done a great job of selling fans on the idea of potential instead of actual current production. This was in reference to the Cano deal. I mean, that's a big name for a bunch of prospects, and the prospects will probably have a greater impact on the Mariners than Cano had on the Mariners. I think he was very good for them. So I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and get super excited about these two players that the Indians got yet, because I know nothing about them. The Nationals don't have that great of a farm system, right? They usually rank somewhere around the middle in terms of farm system.
Yeah, they're not. They shipped their number one prospect going to the White Sox, didn't they? For Adam Eaton.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they have a couple other guys kicking around, but like this wasn't one of them. So I don't know. It sucks. I guess the emotional side of things is I really liked Yan Gomes. I thought he was a cool player. And after what he did in 2014, he just had me, I guess. I'm always like, he'll come back to that. I'm sure of it. He is going to be an all-star who somehow hit 281 with a 320 on base percentage. That's totally tenable. He totally doesn't swing at everything. And I just kind of like the kind of hitter he became this year. I wrote about it a couple of times how he became such a power sellout kind of a guy. And it was, it was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to walk ever. So I'm just going to try and crush the ball at every given moment. And it kind of worked out for him. Again, he had one of his better offensive years. So I'm going to miss him. But like you said, it might be Eric Haas, who, he might actually be able to hit rather than just hit for a catcher.
Yeah, and speaking of power, if you want Eric Haas, that dude can hit a lot of home runs.
Exactly. Yeah, so we'll see. I'm not excited for what will promise to be at least 100 games of I don't know. How many plate appearances do you think Roberto Perez is going to get next year?
I mean, it depends on what they do, I guess. If it's just Perez and Haas, I would think Perez would be the starter. So
400 plate appearances.
There you go.
Good Lord.
Depressingly high amount.
Oh God.
I would love him to just trust Eric Haas and give him a shot. The other weird thing I thought about is that their loyalty to Yan Gomes, which was great, obviously, because we all loved him. But just think, the most recent one is obviously Francisco Mejia. They didn't want to give him a shot at catcher because Yan Gomes was
there.
And then, I mean, you can go back a couple years, because with Jonathan Lucroy, if they would have said at that point, just guarantee him the spot or whatever, you probably win a World Series. It's just weird they had this so much loyalty to Yan Gomes to just let him go now to save a couple $1 million.
Yeah, I know, and it's and I think it's the save a couple $1 million. It's really the weirdest part to it. Like you said, like it's been just a weird series of events, I guess, in terms of the moves they've made around the catcher position. And I don't know. I just kind of saw him as a bit of an anchor to the team. You know, one maybe not. He's not on the on the level of Lindor or like Kluber or anything like that. But like of all the players, I kind of expected to be here for a few years, especially after, like you said, the moves they made in not moving him or in moving highly touted prospects or not going after Jonathan Lucroy. They just go ahead and do this. I don't know. It's very strange. I'm halfway working on an article about it because it seems weird. It seems like a weird move that I know that once it was made, you can tell it's probably not going to be the last one. Then we hear about all these ideas for trading a pitcher, and like it makes me think back to like the late '90s when they didn't make they made too many moves to kind of keep the same team on the field, as opposed to it feels like the exact opposite. So it's maybe not a tear down, but like a weird retooling that. I don't know. Again, that's why I'm just kind of off put a bit by the Gomes move. I mean, it's not like they can, they're not good enough to compete with like the Astros right now, but that doesn't mean you got to blow it up. Or maybe it does. I don't know. I've been thinking about that the last couple of days. Like, there's definitely no way you compete with the Astros. You need to, and like the Astros are miles ahead of anyone in terms of everything.
Yeah, and that goes back to the tweet you were mentioning. That was by Jared Diamond about the teams are selling wage suppression. Like they're selling it because it works. That's how.
No, exactly. I mean,
you build by getting all these players.
It's smart. I mean, not every team can. I mean, the Astros can spend like whoever. They do have a very rich owner, and they're in a big market, and they're winning a lot, so they have a high revenue. But not every team can spend like them. Yeah. So obviously, the wage suppression is vital for a team like the Indians. It's a really fucked up thing to say, quite honestly.
But I mean, I think even more than that, like it's just the younger players are more talented now. Like they're coming up, they're immediately ready, and you control them for so long. So until the players association is ready to like protect the younger players instead of just focusing on vets, like this is gonna keep happening.
No, exactly, it's gonna get worse
because all they ever care about is just getting the vets their big payday when they hit free agency. But that's gonna happen less and less. Like eventually, you're gonna have to ensure that these players and God forbid minor leaguers get some kind of compensation before they're taking off.
How could you say such a thing? Minor leaguers getting paid. Madness, I say.
I know, right? How dare me? I mean, it's eventually going to have to come to that. You got to admit it eventually that you can't have. I mean, it's like 30 years old is like the cutoff at this point where you're going to be paying people a ton of money because they've watched it happen so many times, like Albert Pujols and.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, you think about like what does. These players are so good so immediately already. Like an aging curve, we were used to a certain aging curve, but like, is it now an aging plateau? I guess like Francisco Lindor is already so good. He's 23 or 24, or so the most outsized example is Mike Trout. He's just hanging up 10 win seasons. He's amazing already. How much better can he get? I guess I don't know. How does it affect the Indians if somehow the association fixes it so that now control is no longer really an absurd number of years in 6 years? It is really crazy to think that you end up with a team and you're just with them for 6 years. And like, I can't think of a great argument for it. I can think of some bad ones. They put all the effort into training you and making you better. So that's a pretty shitty argument. But I don't know. I you wonder how it's going to affect the Indians down the road because. If free agency goes full bore, and everyone is just a free agent all the time, it's just going to make the rich richer. So I don't know how you make it more equitable so the small market teams can continue to compete because this is the only way they can compete right now. And the other way they compete is by trading off the players you love the most. Which, as I tweeted out last week, it really sucks rooting for a team that just becomes surrounded by vultures every offseason, especially now when they start putting out these feelers for. maybe we'll get rid of all of our players. What do you think? Like, I don't know. It would really suck.
Yeah, it's weird being on this end. Like just a few years ago, that core that Yan Gomes was in of Jason Kipnis,
Yeah.
Lonnie Chisenhall, Cody Allen. I guess we can count like Josh Tomlin. They like that core of when the team was really bad. That they're all at that point now where they're being dangled out there. Just feels weird.
The whole that whole core is basically going to be gone soon. It's going to be Jason Kidd. Going to be the only one left now. It's him, and then I don't know. I mean, the 2013-ish season.
Brantley, that's a big one.
Brantley's gone. I mean, Chisenhall's gone. Allen's gone. Santana, obviously.
Yeah, and they're still a really good team, but that's like all the players that I was really rooting for because they were here when the team was so bad, like slogging through it and keeping us entertained.
Exactly.
That's why 2016 sucks so much because now they're all gone. They're not going to win one with the Indians.
Right. I mean, and Chisenhall's stuck in the Pirates now too. So
that poor guy. I don't know. So yeah, that sucks. Yan Gomes is gone. I mean, the Indians have also been dangling out pitchers, obviously, like you said, Corey Kluber and Carrasco and Trevor Bauer, which brings us to our next little mini story here.
Good work.
Holy cow, he had himself a weekend on Twitter. I don't know exactly what he's getting at with all this. I don't believe Trevor when he says he's just having fun. I don't think it's weird that he'd be quiet for so long and then he just starts doing this, but it basically started with him. He said a completely factual thing to a fan. It was like, spoiler alert, I was better than Corey Kluber this year, which is not wrong at all.
No.
It's not something we're used to in the sports world, seeing like teams said out loud that a player said he's better than his teammate. I think if Corey Kluber is just a regular person, he probably doesn't care. He probably knows too that Trevor Bauer was right. But it was so funny because I was on the way home from work when that happened. I checked Twitter before I leave work and I saw everybody talking about it. And then in the car, like 10 or 15 minutes later, he was already on MLB Network radio talking about it with Casey Stern and Brad Lidge. And they were just all giddy to have him on. And they were so dancing around, like trying to even offend him in the tiniest way. Like before he came on, all they were doing was railing against him. Like, you don't do this to your teammate. This is terrible. Then he came on and he was like, well, I get what you're saying, Trevor, and all this crap. And then there was one point that was really funny where like Trevor turned it around and he said, well, you know what I think of MLB Network and you guys, right? And then there was this complete silence.
Oh, that's beautiful.
He basically just said like, yeah, I don't know what was going through his head, but he basically just said like, you should be promoting players like me with a personality and all that, which I guess kind of works, but it doesn't make it less annoying that he has a personality.
No.
It's just kind of an annoying one a lot of the times.
Right. I mean, this is probably just evidence of two things also. He's coming out of his shell over time, and also he's training now, so he probably just has a ton of free time. Like, you can't lift weights all day and throw all day, so he probably just have a bunch of, just nothing to do all day, so he's just going to needle fans on Twitter. And I mean, again, he was right. He was great this year.
Yeah, there's literally nothing wrong with what he said.
No.
I mean, I guess the contextual
more than anything else. That's all.
It's weird. Yeah.
I would say it's more just something we're not used to. I mean, I don't know. I'm not Corey Kluber. I don't know how he thinks. I mean, I'm sure he knew he was probably worse than Trevor Bauer, but guys at that level compete in such an intense way. I don't know how they're gonna, embrace a thing like that. I'm not that kind of person. So maybe maybe this will be the schism that it just destroys the team from the inside out, and somehow their best years were 2017 or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a strange thing for him to say. Nah, that's not strange. I take that back. It's fun, I guess. I don't know. I can't.
It's really weird.
I can't decide if that's the type of player I want the Major League Baseball to promote. I want them to promote good players, but I don't want them to promote just guys who are just kind of assholes. That's not really a good. I don't know. Image wise, it's not really a good thing. I guess it creates drama, and you don't only want like. I guess if every superstar was like Francisco Lindor, that would be great, I think, in the short term. But we all do want drama. There is a reason that,
his stuff with Alex Bregman is great. That's the kind of stuff I like, that he's needling up.
Right, exactly. It's just like either in a veiled sense or just outright calling out an entire team for cheating. That's brilliant. We could use more of that. Like if these teams are just actively antagonistic towards each other, or if players are just mean, it adds flavor to what can be a very boring game sometimes, I suppose.
And I don't think Bauer's his personality isn't even necessarily unique. Like anybody who, I don't want to say I know Bauer or anything, but anybody grown up on the internet and was on forums before there was huge social media. They all knew people like Trevor
Yeah.
who would take things just far enough where he could pull people or push people's buttons and the epic troll people, and then he backs off when he knows he's coming to that
I was just joking, bro. Yeah,
Right, exactly. It's a joke, bro.
Yeah.
And then he's so quick to, like, when somebody else takes it too far, he steps back and like, whoa, look at this guy taking it too far. This isn't me.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. Like, he's clearly trying to get those reactions out of people, and then he plays the victim. That's like the only legitimate thing I don't like about what he does, is that he always is like, no, I'm not. I'm just messing around. This is just fun.
I'm just begging the question. People like that are the worst. That's true. Yes.
I'm just asking questions. Bro. That's the one thing. Like, I know he feels like he's this unique person doing all this, but there's so many people on the internet like him, and it's most of the stuff he does is fine. Like the thing with the drone where he tweeted out that he got his finger stuck in a drone.
That was funny.
And then he tweeted a picture of him flipping people off. That was great. That's the kind of thing I like.
I take that. I didn't think it was very funny because it was. I don't know.
Oh, I thought
it was almost funny, I guess, because like, oh, I cut my finger off again, and then she just let everything off with that picture. I think it could have been done more artfully, but again, I can't think of a way to do it more artfully. But there was definitely another layer there you could have worked with. I'm not sure how. Maybe a bit more.
I don't think his sense of humor is artful.
Right.
That's not how I describe it. Like the bluntness is what's funny to him.
Right. And I guess because I use Twitter so much, I expect more wordplay. You know. I guess I don't know, something more. I don't know.
Like I flipped my drone and then
I don't know, something. I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe even doing it in a way that doesn't. But I guess you couldn't really do it without having a photo because we need to see the blood. Damn it, we got to see the blood. If it bleeds, it leads. So,
well, the night before he was like going off on Paul Hoynes, which came out of nowhere. I guess probably because Hoynes was talking about the other stuff he did, but I get the feeling he was trying to bait him into doing something.
Oh, bait him.
Because he posted that and left it for a while. Like he so badly wanted Paul Hoynes or somebody to write this big long article about what an idiot he is and then just tweet the picture. I don't think it worked the way he wanted it to, but I thought it was
I think it's just because I guess that was my problem. It was a little ham-handed, you know. Nice hand.
Yeah.
But it could have been, I don't know, it could have been done better. I can't think of a way offhand how he would have done it better. But
I can't either.
Like every time, say, a president or someone famous dies, John Boyce, or however you pronounce his last name, tweets out a thing that says, "Say what you will about so and so, I've got the receipts," and he tweets out a picture of like a heavily digitized piece, like a screenshot of something, and you can't read it at all because he just runs it through Photoshop like 8 times, so it just becomes a blur.
I love John Boyce.
That's good, you know, like things like that. But I mean, comparing anyone on Twitter to John Boyce is unfair.
Right, that's like his job to be funny and creative. Like
so I guess I was expecting that because I'm so online so often, and for someone who's extremely online as Trevor himself is, or purports to be, I suppose, when really he's just kind of a crappy Twitter troll sometimes.
Yeah, which I guess is as close as we get with an athlete being that close to the internet. So something not quite Indians related. We can make it Indians related.
Do it.
Baseball Prospectus. They're smart people over there.
Right.
They got them good numbers. They have a new stat called DRC plus, which is basically deserved runs created plus. Don't get hung up with the word deserved. What it basically means is that, like,
ladies and gentlemen, that's all you need to know. and the real stats are wrong. Indians are real World Series champs.
Well, when DRA came out, which is deserves run average, I think, which is a pitcher stat, all the comments were like, well, it's not what they deserve, it's what they get. This is basically saying, like, the gist of DRC plus is that it's not measuring outcome. Like WRC plus, OPS plus, and all the other stats like that, they're great. They do have a lot of adjustments. But the bottom line is they're basically taking slugging percentage, on-base percentage, weighting them, and evening them out so they make sense. But they're still just measuring outcomes. So DRC plus is trying to get at what's underneath the outcomes, like what causes all that. They rely heavily on strikeouts and walks. They adjust for opposing pitchers, what I think is really cool. I don't think a lot of stats do that yet.
Yeah, that's too granular for a lot of the stats too. You know, I mean, we're only just now getting to the point, just in terms of data collection, probably where they can do that, I suppose.
Right, which is a big part of getting at what causes outcomes. Like if you know what the pitcher is and what they typically do, you can get a better idea of what the outcome should have been based on their hit. It's a step above like StatCast. They mentioned specifically in one of their many articles about DRC plus, they compare the predictive nature of their so many stats. Like they're way ahead of. I don't know if you've said it on the podcast about how expected WOBA based on exit velocity never
No,
works,
exactly.
but they pretty much prove that too.
I wonder. This
Um,
just came to me. I wonder, and I don't know if it was in one of the baseball prospectus articles describing this stat, but I wonder how large the sample has to be before it's a clear one. The reason I say that is, like you'll have a player who goes into a slump for some reason, and if you look into it a little bit longer, it's because he somehow faced like the team went through a series where they faced like the Astros and then the Indians and then the Red Sox and then like the Yankees or something. And so they're just facing a bunch of Cy Young contenders for like a week and a half straight or something. And so they go like 3 for, 25, 3 for 30 or something like that. And they're just terrible. And I wonder, I'm curious. And because, like you said, it weights based on the opposing pitcher. I wonder how granular you can actually get with that, because that would be an interesting thing to think about if you could get that deep into it, I guess.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because that's.
But But with a rate stat like this, you can't. 30 at bats or whatever is probably simply just not enough. You know what I mean? Not enough stuff.
Yeah. Well, is it a rate stat? Yeah, I guess it's a rate stat, right?
Yeah.
Right.
A rate.
Yeah.
Well, sort of.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Deserved runs created plus. But yeah, that would be neat to see, because right now we can't. Obviously, it's baseball prospectus. They keep a lot of their like really advanced stuff under lock and key, so you don't know the exact specifics. But I would like to know if we can eventually see like different lengths.
I know in the article announcing it, what's his name, Jonathan Judge, did say that later in the week they're going to be getting more into the actual the numbers behind it, which is again the number one reason why baseball prospectus kicks ass and baseball savant does not, because baseball savant's like, don't worry about it, these numbers say this, it's cool, and they don't tell us why or how.
They're numbers. Like, look at them.
I'm pretty sure. Like, I'm sure that like baseball prospectus doesn't have like the full access to all of the baseball savant numbers that like baseball teams do, because that was one of the complaints of baseball savant was they're not. It's coming out of from behind a curtain basically. So this is their way to answer that, I suppose. But because they can't get all the exit velocity stuff like that, they can get larger numbers that probably is already publicly available. But being able to see it all is very nice. At least I'm just curious as to
at least being able to see what's going into it. They do have a couple things, like you can see the park adjustments they use based on. So one of the other big things they do is they don't use like multi-year adjustments. They use individual years, because they're saying that like multi-years punish when there was 1 year that there was a ton of offense in a park, and then a couple of years where it wasn't. Like, you're getting punished for that one. So they just use single years to narrow down the environment.
Too,
and they do show that. They show the different park adjustments, which is kind of neat. Like you said, I'm sure they'll show more numbers as the week goes on. And I looked at specifically the 2018 Indians for some of these stats. It's not too surprising who's 1, 2, and 3 in DRC plus last year. Jose Ramirez, Francisco Lindor, Michael Brantley. Obviously, Jose Ramirez is 155. Lindor was 135. Brantley was 124. And then it gets kind of interesting after that, because Edwin Encarnacion, by WRC plus, he was quite a ways below Michael Brantley, but he's actually 1 point lower. He was 123 in DRC plus, which I tried to look at, like, maybe to kind of reverse engineer what they're looking at. It's hard to tell exactly, because he was worse across the board quite a bit. He walked a little bit more. He hit more home runs, but they claim home runs shouldn't have that much of a weight compared to WRC plus.
I wonder. I mean, again, he hits the ball incredibly hard, and I can't imagine. So there must be some kind of batted ball information. Maybe not actual exit velocity and things like that, but like on Fangraphs, a hard hit ball is over 95 miles per hour is how that is calculated. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked into how they actually quantify these things yet, but that maybe that had something to do with it, because it just seems like he hits the ball so goddamn hard, because he does. But
well, another one was Jason Kipnis. So his WRC plus was 89, and his DRC plus was 105. So that's a huge gap for him too. And then, so maybe because his ground ball, he's one of the fewest who put it on the ground. So maybe it's like where they're hitting the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's a fly ball versus a ground ball combined with
how hard that would make sense for the closeness of Brantley and Encarnacion too, because Brantley hit a lot of ground balls compared to Encarnacion, who big fly ball guy. Same with Kipnis. Right? I remember I wrote about that back in like June and July. Like the trend was there for Jason Kipnis to have some kind of a breakout offensive season. It just never, came to be, I suppose.
Yeah, right. Which is kind of what DRC Plus is saying, that he might be bound to next year. And then Yan Gomes is only 97, so maybe the Indians,
right?
I'm sure they have things that are way more advanced than this, but maybe they have something that's telling them Yan Gomes is going to decline real quickly coming up. And DRC Plus kind of points to that a little bit, that he was below average, and based on the predictability, he's probably going to be below average again, maybe a little bit more because he's getting older.
That makes sense too. Catching is a wear and tear sport. I mean, not to go all the way back to the Yan Gomes thing. Maybe it does make a good idea to trade him a little bit, only because he's 30. What is he now? 32 or something like that. 30 years old. How old is he?
Something like that. Old. Like I feel bad because I'm almost 30. I'm almost
years old, Matt. All right.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he's 30 years old.
I would have traded you by now. I need to trade you for a couple prospects. You're obviously on the downhill now.
He's 30 years old, so that is an inflection point kind of for catchers. I mean, he's caught a lot of games. So yeah. He does have an injury history.
And just for fun, there's no sense in asking who the highest season was. I mean, I guess, do you know who the best season by DRC Plus by an Indians player was? Oh, well, Jim Tomey's 2002 season. It's crazy. It's 191, and the next closest is Manny Ramirez at 167.
My God, Jim Tomey was amazing. Every time I look at his numbers, I just go, "Oh yeah." He wasn't like just because like our lasting images of him are like late 2000s Tomey, but like early to mid 2000s or 1990s Tomey was amazing to say the least. So,
yeah. And the legendary Frank Duffy had the two worst Indians years by DRC Plus on the offense. But I mean, those are 66 WRC Plus seasons. So Roberto Perez, I should have looked. He might have been pretty close to that years. But 1974, 1975, Frank Duffy, terrible.
They were horrendous in the 70s. They had Gaylord Perry though, and
the Indians must have been atrocious in the 70s.
They had one of the most perfectly built
70s, 80s.
What do you call it? Clubhouses ever, because they had Frank Robinson as their manager, and then their ace pitcher was Gaylord Perry, who was a very good old boy from the South. And they did not see eye to eye, to say the least. And then just a bunch of crappy players and just angry guys who hated each other and themselves just across the diamond.
So every Monday, we ask everybody on social media, Twitter and Facebook, ask us questions we can answer on the podcast. It's kind of hard. We're in the middle of the off season. Ask whatever you want. We'll try to answer it, baseball or not, at this point. But we got good baseball ones, just because so much is happening now. The first one I asked you before the episode, I also don't know now, but I really want to know an answer. So maybe if somebody listening has one. At Slang EUG, he wants to know, has there ever been another contending team that traded away an ace and gone on to have immediate success? That's an interesting question, because the Indians, they might trade away Kluwer, Bauer, or Carrasco. You can qualify all of them as an ace, really. So to look at history and see a team that's done that and then went on to win right away.
What is an ace? Is always one stupid question to ask. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
it's hard to think of one.
Like, the thing is, we have to look at times after 1969 or whatever, whenever the reserve clause disappeared, because then guys actually had free agency. Trying to think of teams that had success suddenly. That wasn't really a. Oh, I have a good one. The Phillies, when they traded away Cliff Lee, because they ended up with Roy Halladay.
Well, there you go. You trade one ace for another one, you can be kind of set. Wait, didn't they have them both at the same time?
Then they signed Cliff Lee when his contract was up with the Rangers, after he went to he went to the Mariners and then was traded to the Rangers for Justin Smoke.
That's right. Who I have a jersey of, by the way. I have a Mariners
Smoke
jersey. I do, yeah.
Great name. So that's the only one I could think of. Because like someone like a lot of times they trade away their aces because they were blowing it up.
Might turn this into an article and look at it more, and that's a really interesting thing to look at. I don't know.
Was Mark Pryor traded, or he just kind of got hurt and faded away? Because they got good after he got hurt. Oh well, what about the Mariners when they traded?
They've never been good.
They won 117 games in 2001.
They traded Griffey.
Yeah, well, they traded Griffey and Randy Johnson.
Oh yeah, that might be one. How soon were those two events related?
He was traded in, I think that was 1998, though.
Oh, that doesn't count.
He was traded in 98. And the Mariners in 99. Jesus Christ, he was so fucking good with the Astros. Oh, good Lord. They went 76 and 85 the next year, 79 and 83 the next year, then 91 and 71, and then 116 and 46.
Yeah, that doesn't count. 2 years. If you want to put it in today's numbers, do you want to trade Corey Kluber now and be bad for 2 more years? I sure don't. So yeah, we'll look into that more, I think. So the next question is at Dreaming Baseball, who's Quincy Wheeler. He's on Let's Go Tribal and writes a lot of great fan posts. He asked, a time traveler shows up and tell you the Indians traded a notable player at the winter meetings. If you had to bet on one guy to be that player traded, who would it be? I mean, first of all, thanks for phrasing. This is just basically who's going to be traded at the winter deadline or the winter meetings, but thank you for making it more fun.
Give us some funky flavor to it. So yeah, very much appreciated.
A time traveler, Merritt, arrives. This is the one thing he chooses to do and tell us about this. I love this guy.
Well, we all have things we care about.
Jason Kipnis is my answer. At this point, I don't think I can say a pitcher. I've already chosen that hill to die on. They're not going to trade a pitcher before the season starts.
No, that honestly seems really stupid to trade a pitcher.
So my answer is Jason Kipnis.
Kipnis is so unmovable, though. I'm not going to trade Lindor. I'm not going to trade Ramirez. Edwin Encarnacion, is he notable enough? Could they trade him, 35-year-old slugger?
Oh, yeah, he's notable. No, he's not tradable, but he's definitely notable.
He's not tradable because he was so mediocre. I think they'd trade Brad Hand for more pitchers. That's a pretty good answer. Good work, Merritt. I'll pat you on the back.
Here's your pat.
Maybe... Speaking of notable names of the trade, Cody Anderson.
He's not notable just because he's sweaty.
He's notably sweaty.
He is notably sweaty.
I will mention him every single episode at least once. He will not fade from the zeitgeist. We will know his name. He will be back.
He's still on the 40-man roster. Is he still a thing?
He's still there. He's on the DL.
Well, I know, but so yeah. So is Brad Hand your real answer? I don't think it's terrible. That's a good answer.
No, I think it makes sense. I mean, he has a lot of control, and he get a lot more young pitching for him, more arms, and they don't need one arm; they need 4 basically for the bullpen. So,
yeah. And then at JBelog88, he just asked, "How comfortable are you with the team's retooling efforts?" So I guess just sort of in general, Merritt, like, how do you feel about all this?
I hate it. I hate the whole goddamn thing. I think it's stupid, and I think it's going to go poorly. I mentioned it before. It feels like the exact opposite move they did in the late 90s when they kept on trying to keep the same team on the field. Now they're trying to, fiddle around with things, and I just feel there's going to be a weird blockbuster trade. I know you said they're not going to trade a pitcher, but I think they might fucking do it. The thing is, you can trade Carlos Carrasco and I'll die, but it makes so much sense. He's already had Tommy John surgery like 3 years ago or 4 years ago. He's 31. You can get such a haul for him with the amount of control he's under. I don't know. I think a deal like that actually makes a lot of sense, and I just hate it.
See, that's the whole thing. It's all, I hate this. It's awful, but it kind of makes sense.
It makes it. I mean, they were so shitty in 2018. Like they were for a 91 win team. They were like one of the worst 91 win teams I've ever seen. They got there because on the strength of what we saw them play against all season. So if they go from 91 to 101 wins, which is the level they have to be at to try and actually win a World Series, they're going to have to do something drastic. And I hate that. But the way they did it 20 years ago didn't work. So you might as well do the exact opposite, because why not swing wildly from one side to the other? It makes things more exciting, at least. Damn it.
Middle ground. Who
you know,
needs
if you're
that
a middle of the road
shit?
guy,
Go
he's going
one
to get hit
side
by
or
a
the
truck
other.
going both ways. So pick a side. Yeah, I
That's
hate it.
basically it.
But
I hate it, but I get
and
it.
the fact of the matter is, you know what? Trevor Bauer has
That's
emerged as the ace of the staff, and Mike Clevenger is no slouch. So he was really, really good. And I mean, he was the third. He was this by some measures that you would call him the second best pitcher if you wanted, depending on how you want to look at it. And then Shane Bieber, I think, is going to make a big leap. So I don't know. I hate it, but it's a good idea, and they need more relief pitching. So badly do they need relief pitching.
Yeah, there's been several years where we've always said like they have so much starting pitcher they could deal from. Maybe this is the one year where it would actually make sense to do it because their holes are so large
it's
everywhere else.
The winter, and we're going to talk about the same 7 things in the next 4 months. I'm going to say it again. The Indians have a position of strength, and you deal from that position of strength if you like. Everyone agrees that no one is going to be any good in 2019 in the Central. I'm still a little worried about the Twins, but
no.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
It almost seems quaint now being worried about the offense or the outfield a couple years ago, doesn't it?
It does.
When Michael Brantley was there, hurt or not, he was there. There was some hope there, and now
there's nothing there.
Whatever, right?
I mean,
it seems silly now.
One of these toolsy ass dudes has to hit
compared to now.
like one of them. And then of course we have Yandy Diaz. let's never forget that he's there waiting. That's true. We don't care.
Well, the Indians forget about him, so why don't we? It's fine. Whatever. No, he's gonna. I do forget about him because the Indians never.
Then you see that beautiful name.
There's a third baseman. Let the dude play.
He has 1 home run.
Let him flex on the haters and balls.
Well, bang! Digging a hole. You know, he hits it so hard the catcher can't get up. Single.
Look at that exit velocity, straight into the ground, making divots. All right, Barrett, that's going to be our show this week.
Another classic.
It was fun. The Indians are awful.